What inner child wounds have you been carrying around with you without even knowing? I created this inner child wheel for my coaching clients to be able to understand the feelings behind our behaviors. Let's start with the feeling of guilt. How do I know if my inner child is carrying a guilt wound? I might always be apologizing, even when I haven't done anything wrong. I might feel responsible for other people's feelings, and I might be people pleasing. What do I think about myself? What is in that inner voice? It's telling me you've done something wrong. And what causes this wound? You might want to consider if you've had emotionally unstable or cold caregivers. How to heal the guilt wound? Developing healthy emotional boundaries so that you can tend to your own emotions with compassion. Knowing the difference between healthy versus unhealthy guilt, and not being afraid to make mistakes. Understanding that mistakes happen, and this is how we learn. Everyone makes mistakes. The next one is the abandonment wound. And to know if your inner child has an abandonment wound, you might be staying in relationships longer than are good for you. Or you might even be avoiding relationships altogether. You might even be abandoning yourself through certain addictive behaviors, poor health care, or even risk-taking behaviors. You heal this wound once you're able to feel safe to be emotionally vulnerable. Once you are interested and capable of seeking secure relationships, once you are practicing non-attachment and self-acceptance. The next one to look at is the rejection wound. Your inner child might be saying, no one accepts me. The rejection wound can be experienced through having caregivers that rejected you. You were a scapegoat or the black sheep of the family. Maybe you experienced peer or academic rejection, bullying, or favoritism from a teacher. You're going to compensate for this wound by being sensitive to criticism, being defensive, seeking retaliation, and maybe even being closed off with your own emotions. Healing comes once you've learned to accept constructive feedback. You're able to seek help from professionals. You can make peace with yourself, and you can have a sense of forgiveness and understanding all around. Next is the shame wound. And this one tells you that something is wrong with you. This can be caused by being a victim of sexual abuse, domestic violence, or having overly critical caregivers. You might be compensating for this by people pleasing. Other people's needs matter more. You might be experiencing some anger and resentment. You might feel unworthy of love, so you don't even seek relationships or friendships. And this may eventually lead to self-isolation and self-pity. To heal from the shame, we need to learn that we matter. We take care of our own needs by setting healthy boundaries. We would learn that to have self-compassion means not having self-pity. We would feel worthy of love through ongoing practices of self-love. And we're comfortable to be ourselves in social settings. We remove the mask of people-pleasing. The betrayal wound can result from having your trust violated by your caregivers in a significant way, having sexual, physical, emotional boundaries crossed, even experiencing chronic neglect, and even manipulation. The thought there is no one can be trusted. And you compensate by this by having an avoidant attachment. You have low self-esteem. You might be hypervigilant. You might experience infidelity in relationships. To heal from this betrayal wound, you would be seeking secure relationships as you build a secure relationship with yourself. You would be setting healthy boundaries that lead to increased self-confidence and self-trust. You would be learning compassion and forgiveness with yourself and with others. I think you can tell a theme already in how to heal these wounds so far in terms of compassion and boundaries. The next wound is neglect. This one tells you no one cares. You might have been a latchkey kid, being left alone a lot, not having your basic needs met, having emotionally unavailable caregivers. And you compensate by that by having low expectations and standards in relationships. You don't advocate for your own needs. You let things slide. You neglect your own basic needs, your health, your education, your work, and you're sarcastic in serious situations. To heal from this means you're checking in with yourself to ensure that your own needs are being met. You're feeling safe to express your needs in your relationships. You're advocating for yourself. You're asserting yourself. You're practicing self-compassion and spending time with emotionally available people. The judgment wound tells us, what will they think about you? This is caused by harsh judgment, criticism from a caregiver, teacher, family member, peer, sibling. Could also be as a result of being a witness to this ongoing harsh judgment towards others. You compensate by this by strictly following the rules and the laws, having very rigid boundaries, judging yourself before others will, having a harsh inner critic. You might even criticize other people's flaws and mistakes and shortcomings. To heal from this means you face the shadow of judgment upon others and yourself. You practice mindfulness, be in the present moment with radical acceptance of yourself. And you know that what other people think about you is none of your business. And finally, we have the injustice wound. Now, this one says, I don't deserve to be treated fairly. And the cause of this can come from childhood poverty, discrimination, racialization, unfairness, or inequality. You may also have been judged for expressing your own emotions, deprived of feeling emotions. And you compensate with this by working in the helping professions. But this is from a wounded place. You have high standards and perfectionism. You might even be advocating for animals and human rights from a place, again, of this wound of injustice with high expectations for change. You may even have a negative view toward the legal system, police, government, healthcare professionals, that they even know what they're doing. To heal this means you move through your anger and unworthiness and into self-agency and self-empowerment. You help others. Yes, you're still helping others, but now it's done from a place of compassion instead of that wounded ego. You're advocating for human and animal rights from a place of self-respect and dignity instead of that wounded ego. And you accept that life isn't fair and turning your attention to what you are in control of. It's quite possible to have all of these wounds happening all at once. They really have a lot of overlapping qualities about them if you didn't notice. And the overlapping pathways toward healing all of these wounds definitely involves, as you would have heard again, the boundaries, the self-compassion, the mindfulness, the acceptance, and building that self-worth, confidence, communication, and assertiveness skills.